transformation to the sector. Can I please have the next slide? So just to give you a bit of a background, I'll touch on historical context, the role of the PPRA in ensuring and shaping professional standards within the sector, and also barriers to entry, especially for the marginalized group. So firstly, the history of our property sector in South Africa is shaped by colonial laws, which were entrenched in political and economic disparities until the advent of 1994. So after that, most groups of South Africa were equally given opportunity. So there were programs that were introduced to ensure that we are encouraging and facilitating inclusion, especially the historically marginalized group. So there were programs like reconstruction and development programs, which is known as RDP, broad-based Black economic empowerment, and also there is an Institute of Estate Agents of South Africa. So with that, how does the PPRA come in ensuring standard and also professionalization? So we have a Property Practitioner Act, which was introduced to ensure that property practitioners are registering. They are meeting and complying to the code of conduct of the sector. And there is one notable, program that we will hear us speaking about every now and again, which is PDI, Previously Disadvantaged Group. And under it, it is enhanced through one learner, one agency, support of SMMEs, and also assisting with principalization. Then lastly, consumer support. Okay, so with that said, obviously each and every program or implementation always have barriers. So in terms of barriers, there are challenges that were highlighted in our secondary data, and also you'll see when I'm presenting the primary data that there is a lack of training and skills development programs. There is cost of compliance, difficulties in getting reassessed, especially if one fails exam. It comes with cost and delayed time. There is lack of bursaries and scholarship. So these further increase the informal practices within the sector. So I'll also move you to the next slide. Next slide, speaking on transformation model. So if we are speaking about the property sector as a regulator, and we say transformation, what do we mean? What are we expecting? So here we're expecting someone to enter as a learner and to end up as a host, and retaking the new learners in the process. So how do we do that? We train them, they enter, they get their Fidelity Fund certificate. We further train our candidates until they get to examination. As soon as they pass, they continue to get a full status, so that it means that they can practice on their own. After that, we are encouraging them to own their own businesses, so that in the long run, they can host other new learners. So that's how the cycle works. At the end of the day, the learner that entered without knowledge, they must supervise and host other learners. So the cycle continues. Okay, so in terms of research approach, can I get the next slide? Okay, thank you. So in terms of research approach, just to remind you, the main objective is to understand the demographics of profile of our practitioners, to get factors influencing professionalization, and also challenges for integrating previously disadvantaged person. So to unpack that, we utilize a quantitative approach with a semi-structured questionnaire. We also we're targeting all property practitioners, whether formally practicing or informally practicing, to get a sense of what is happening in the sector. So our set goal was a sample size of 381, but we had 217 completed questionnaire and 478 attempted questionnaire. So you'll see on our questionnaires that we are repeating per question to ensure that we are showing you what we saw in terms of what we collected. Then in terms of confidence level, we employed 95%, margin of error was 5%. Data collection tools that we use, we're using Question Pro. For data collection and analysis, we use NVivo and SPSS. So to pre-test and ensuring that our data was relevant, people could click on our link and we are asking relevant questions. We did a pre-test survey, first with a small group of property practitioners who entered in a webinar. Then after that, with a few things that we ended up adjusting, then we fully launched our survey. So moving on to results now, I'll be speaking on the demographic profile. So you'll see I'll be discussing gender, race, age, level of education, location of practice, and years of experience. So speaking on gender, as you can see, our sector is female dominated, and with sitting at a percentage of 63 and males are sitting at 34. And in terms of age, majority of our practitioners are aged above 46 years. So this, just comparing what we got with what is being said on secondary data. Secondary data is stating that we have native industry, but looking at this, it is female dominated. Then another point that is worth noting is that previous studies have shown that females are more likely to study a property-related field, but the field still prefers to adopt or intake prefer females. Same thing with the age. It's highlighting that we are still having those inability to absorb in the sector. The fact that majority of our respondents are sitting from 46 years and above highlights an issue. Then moving on to race and education, we have a white-dominated respondents based on this research, and education. Most of our respondents were highly educated. So this further highlights that just one thing to note that even if you are black in the sector, you most of the time, because of financial reason, cost of compliance, you get stuck on an intern level or on the candidate level. So additionally, people of color are just struggling in terms of being principal agents, and we think, or based on the study, it says that it is cost-related. So in terms of education, the overall South Africa, individuals aged 25 to 64 has acquired grade 12, and percentages are rising since 2014. It is also highlighted in the previous studies that even though black South African can opt for the property-related field, but there is low absorption when compared to whites. Okay, moving on, can I get the next slide, please, based on registration status. So in terms of registration status, we are sitting at 79% of respondents who indicated yes, that they are registered and there was proof provided, and 21% indicated no. So in terms of capacity, most of our property practitioners are sitting at principal. Principal, you can think of them as managers, as supervisors, meaning that they are hosting at that stage. And we have 31% who have full status, and candidates sitting at 21, and 7% those who are independent or informally practicing. And just to summarize with this, in terms of demographics, with this slide, this is indicating the principal estate agent from 2017 to 2023, which also further highlights that it's female-dominated regardless of the race. This is highlighting cultural dynamics, but at the same time, it is highlighting transformation in terms of gender. Then moving on, as you can see, most of our respondents have 10 years and above of experience, which correspond with the age of our respondent, because most of them are 49 and above. And then in terms of practices, in the data collected, most of our participants were from Gauteng, Western Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal. Even on the database, it's reflecting the same thing. This is just highlighting that the demand for safe living option, especially in the metropolitan areas, is very high. So that's why they are prominent and they're contributing toward the registered property practitioner. Then moving on to the factors influencing professionalization within the sector, our respondents say that they are aware of the PPRA's role. They also highlighted that the factors influencing professionalism within this sector is that it is the importance of formal training program, adherence to industry standards, and also highlighting the negative impact. There is cost of compliance and a possibility or potential of fraud and corruption, which still needs further studies. So just to conclude on my study, I have to speak on professionalism and transformation. So you'll see the ticks and cross. So in terms of the tick, the industry compliance is related to professionalism. Our property practitioners are highly educated, they are registered. In terms of capacity, they are mostly sitting on full status and principal agents. And then moving on to transformation, the gender, still it's female dominated, which is exceptional on my own view. Then in terms of age, we need more youth, race. We need to have we need to have all population group represented, and also in terms of geographical location. Then lastly, you will see the main reason of the state research, it is answering to the result that we got. So recommendations are based on diversity and inclusivity. So we need to focus more on people of color and younger people. We need training and skills development that are focusing on modern skills. We need stakeholder engagement on different platforms. We need sustainable practices where we are educating our community members. We are recruiting and also understanding the property needs and preferences. Lastly, we have to have policy engagement, which will strengthen the regulatory presence, streamline operation, and build trust through enhanced professionalization and proactive engagement. Thank you. And then you say sorry.
All right, thank you, colleagues. I think every one of our speakers wants to be a keynote address. Next time we shall prepare for keynote addresses. I think obviously their work is really relevant and important. Our next speaker is Ms. Mandela. Yes. All right. She will try to keep the time. She promised.
Yes, I'm short. All right. All right. Greetings, everyone. My name is Ggeberha Mlengana. I am a Human Settlement Development Master's candidate. I am also a research assistant for the PPRA. I'm not sure if everyone's able to see me. So I'll be presenting on the research findings of the third research project, which was titled Sector Skills Development and Resilience in the South African Property Sector. Okay. All right. So the South African property sector is one of the country's most regulated and economically significant industries. However, like every other industries, it is not without challenges. So it faces challenges in achieving meaningful professionalization, transformation, as well as skills development. So the existence then of these challenges doesn't mean that the sector is uncoordinated. No, there are key institutional bodies that actually help in shaping the sector. Briefly, the PPRA plays a role in the professionalization and transformation of the sector. The services sector facilitates skills development through learnerships, internships, and skills programs, as well as the QCTO, which oversees the implementation, assessment, as well as certification of occupational qualifications. Now, despite these existing frameworks and all the regulations, many of our practitioners, they still struggle to access relevant as well as inclusive training programs. So this limits then their ability to develop the competencies as well as the resilience that they need to thrive in our dynamic market, right? So the question now is why is this the case, which is what we aim to answer with our study, which aim to assess the skills development and resilience in the South African property sector, focusing on the roles of the PPRA, services sector, and to recommend strategies to actually strengthen professionalization, inclusivity, as well as sustainability in the sector. Next slide, please. Now, this brings us to our research objectives. We had quite plenty of them, but we just chose those three that speak to the research aim. So we sought to identify the initiatives that are available for property practitioners to assess the current practices of skills development that are in the sector and to find skills gaps that exist and also to recommend sustainable solutions for the integration of training programs and skills development initiatives for the property practitioners. Okay, so moving on to the research approach. We employed mixed methods and adopted convergent parallel design, which means that qualitative and quantitative data were collected simultaneously and independently, and then we matched them together for comparison. Now, for the quantitative component, data was gathered through a semi-structured survey that was distributed using Question Pro, and then it was analyzed using the very same tool as well as descriptive statistics. For the qualitative component, data was obtained through focus groups interviews that were conducted on Microsoft Teams, and data was thematically coded and analyzed using Atlas TI. Right. So moving on to the sample strategy and the sample size. For the quantitative component, we employed stratified sampling, and we targeted 4 groups, those that are in the One Learner, One Estate Agent program, the candidate COPDE candidates, as well as the SMMEs. So we had a population size of 1,384, and our sample size was 209. For the qualitative component, we employed expert sampling, and we targeted 4 groups, 4 focus groups where we had 10 participants in each. Now, these included the SAQA, CETA, QCTO, as well as higher education. Now, out of the 4 intended focus groups, we only had 2 that were successful with the SDPs and the QCTO. Now, as we move on to the research findings, I just need to highlight that each of the questions were presented based on the number of participants that had actually completed a particular question. Okay, so for age, we received a total of 333 responses. The majority of the respondents were aged 18 to 35, making up 48% of the total sample. which shows a strong youth representation in the sector. Now, in terms of gender, 56% were female and 44% were male, which also reflects positive steps towards gender balance in the property sector. So when we're looking at race or ethnicity, we had a total of 332 participants, and majority of our respondents were blacks, which were 64%. When looking at the province of practice, we had a total of 335 responses, and majority were based in Gauteng, KZN, Western Cape, and smaller representations from the remaining provinces, which also goes back to the trend that was noticed in the previous studies. Now, moving to the understanding of the roles. So this section was looking at the overall understanding of the roles as well as responsibilities of the PPRA, CETA, as well as the QCTO. Now for PPRA, looking at those who had indicated definitely likely to understand the roles and responsibilities of the PPRA, as well as those that were likely, respondents showed a clear understanding because there is more than an 80% response that was received. And in terms of the functions and roles, respondents also strongly agreed on the core regulatory compliance of the PPRA, and the highest rated functions was ensuring compliance, protecting consumers, which was rated at 82%, followed by regulating the industry, promoting education, and fostering transformation being the list. Right. So for CETA, slide please. For CETA, most respondents showed a clear understanding of its roles. We had those that had indicated definitely likely and likely, which were above 70%. Now, in terms of its core functions and roles, respondents showed strong confidence, particularly in ensuring quality in education and training, identifying skills development, which were both responded to by 74% of our participants, followed by promoting learnerships and developing sector skills plans as the list. For the QCTO, similar to CETA, we received a total of 194 responses. Now, however, if we look at the trend, the QCTO recorded the lowest of understanding, as we're sitting at just less than 50% when looking at the statistics, where 29% had recorded to definitely likely understand and 16% likely, but the highest was the probability, which was 31%. And again, on the functions of the ratings were lower across all categories, and they range between 55 to 58%. However, overseeing certification and implementation were the highest. So this section looked at the perceived benefits of skills development in the property sector, and the highest or the prevalent one was improved quality of the real estate, which was at 19%, followed by economic empowerment and growth, sitting at 15%. Now, when we're looking at this entire trend on the graph, we can tell that for property practitioners, skills development is not only about just personal gain, but it's also about developing the sector while being developed as people. Now, this section looked at the awareness of skills development programs in the property sector, and the most prevalent that was selected was the One Learner, One Estate Agency initiative, as well as CPD, which were equally responded to by 32 respondents, followed by practical training courses, as well as youth empowerment programs. Okay. Now, this section looked at the awareness of professional career training initiatives that are currently in the sector, and One Learner, One Estate Agency was the most prevalent, followed by the principalization program, as well as the SMME incubation program being the least. And then This sector looked at skills development and training needs in the property sector, and the most prevalent was the leadership development, followed by technical skills, new technologies, regulatory compliance, which were all equally 21%, and then followed by skills development, which was the list on the options. Now, this particular section looked at the suggestions made by the practitioners to improve the professional training initiatives. And from the list, mentorship programs, internship programs, as well as including industry experts as instructors, were recorded as the most prevalent and most needed, followed by more hands-on learning and the need to offer follow-up courses, as well as the diversity of training programs. Right. So our research findings show that the sector's intention to empower marginalized groups through programs, namely the One Learner, One Estate Agency, Principalization, and SME incubation, has proven successful with a young, predominantly Black and increasingly female workforce, which is a positive sign of transformation and diversity. And also, while skills development programs have proven to improve career advancement, professionalization, and adaptability, challenges remain in ensuring equal awareness and access for all practitioners. Therefore, to build a resilient and inclusive property sector, there is a need for stronger collaboration, structured mentorship systems, curriculum alignment with market needs, as well as the integration of digital technologies. Right. So some of the recommendations that stemmed out from the research were: first, the implementation of structured mentorship, internship, and blended learning to bridge the gap between theory and practice. Secondly, we need stronger collaboration between PPRA, CETA, QCTO, and educational institutions to ensure that training remains aligned, quality assured, and responsive to industry needs. Thirdly, increasing awareness and participation through targeted communication strategies and incentives will also help more practitioners to access available training programs. And the last one was the integration of emerging technologies like AI, AR, the ProTech tools, and also continuously evaluating programs for their relevance and resilience in the sector. Thank you.
I think she gets an extra clap. She did well. Okay, just before we bring our last speaker, just a quick announcement that after this, we will be required to go to the stairs to take a photo with the minister. So I'm going to ask our speaker to really try to keep to time. We may not have time for the questions like we planned, but we'll do a quick sum up, okay? So let's try to. Anything? Okay, just use yours then. That's fine. I did. From that end. Okay, let's take the laptop away then.
But she just is not there.
Okay. It's been in. You can put this here. Thank you.
I think while we're still getting the technology going, allow me to begin. My name is Mahadi Buthelezi, and I am the Group CEO of the RB Property Group, and I'm also the lead researcher for the Wikona Property Sector Study, which was themed the economic empowerment of women in South Africa's property sector, from policy to practice, unlocking women's economic power. So you may want to know what Wikona stands for or who Wikona is. It is the Women Economic Assembly, which is birthed under the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, Pillar number 5, on economic power, and it is housed in the presidency. We conducted our study, which was released earlier this year, and the findings were startling, really. And the purpose, really, for this presentation is to share the findings from phase 1 and also to outline strategic actions that are needed to economically empower women in the sector. You have now seen that, yes, there is an increase of female participation. The question, though, is, are they economically empowered? Why this study matters? The study, this is the second slide. I'm hoping that it's on the screen. Okay, great. The study matters simply because our country is not short of transformation policy. Our challenge is not the absence of policy. Our challenge is the lack of measurable execution, enforcement, accountability, and conversion into real economic outcomes, particularly for women, and I can take that a step further, Black women. Women exist in this sector. You've seen it, you've heard from my previous presenters, but their participation has not translated into economic scale or value chain empowerment. This study is therefore not about identifying if women are in the sector, but whether the sector is structurally enabling women to economically rise within it. If we move to the next slide, our phase 1 study scope, we looked at 3 core areas of investigation: policy and legislative ecosystem, the business landscape and value chain participation, skills development versus economic absorption. So with that said, the alignment also, I'll focus mostly on the third investigation that we conducted, the alignment between skills development and inputs, skills development inputs and economic reality and economic absorptions was key and critical for us. Now, looking at the methodology, we had to ensure research rigor. This was structured, it was a structured desktop study conducted through review and analysis of national policy frameworks, review of regulatory instruments and transformation scorecards, review of sector market intelligence reports and existing transformation research, and the review of legislative frameworks and sector development documentation. So over 60 primary and secondary information sources were assessed, benchmarking policy ambition against economic output reality. This research also enabled triangulation between policy intention versus actual economic outcomes. And the gap between these two is where the most material evidence actually emerged. Moving on to my next slide. Apologies, I just always, okay. The methodology, yes, I've covered that, thank you very much. We move on to the key findings. Looking at the structural gaps undermining economic empowerment, the policy design to policy execution. While policy intent is strong, implementation, I think someone made mention of this earlier, it remains inconsistently applied and weakly enforced. Moving on to accountability structures being fragile, monitoring and enforcement mechanisms are neither systemic nor mandated. This now limits what we call transformation. Procurement access is informal. Women face irregular, unscalable pathways to procurement opportunities, lacking structural inclusion. Moving on to capability being not constrained, women do not lack the talent or the training. They lack institutional support and strategic value chain placement. Now, you will see that we exist, right? As you heard my previous presenters making mention thereof. But we need institutional support. Moving on to the next slide, the core problem. Thank you. Transformation stalled at participation, not power. Economic ascent is blocked. Despite policy inclusion, structural systems fail to provide scalable economic opportunities for women. Participation to mobility, women's involvement in the sector does not translate into actual ownership. There's a difference here. Procurement traction or even financial power. Transformation trapped in rhetoric. Intentions are politically embraced but remain disconnected from enforceable and measurable outcomes. Now, with that said, we as a country, we have delivered participation without economic mobility, sadly. Women cannot economically rise inside a system that does not structurally support economic ascent. Moving on to our next slide. Why this must change the risk of an untransformed sector. 31 years down the line, women must become economic actors. Without procurement access, financial scale, and value chain inclusion, women remain excluded from sector transformation. We can't afford to always be subcontractors. It can't work. Transformation must deliver outcomes. Transformation that doesn't produce measurable economic results is symbolic, and it is not structural. The sector's legitimacy is currently at stake. A property market without inclusive growth undermines sustainability, equity, and national development goals. Looking into the proposed enforcement architecture, we are glad that the PPRA, spearheading the PSRC, has started the motion. Now, looking at the digital monitoring and transformation enforcement unit is also key. We are encouraging a centralized digital intelligence hub where a new unit within the PSRC can be implemented to digitally capture, analyze, and enforce transformation data across the property sector. Looking into evidence-driven monitoring, the system then can enable scorecards, dashboards, and sector-wide reports to guide enforcement actions and policy refinement. Looking at from voluntary to mandatory, this now will enable incorporating an incentive consequence model, shifting transformation from voluntary ideal to enforceable reality. When we look at the enforcement outputs, next slide please, turning data into actionable transformational tools. Look at annual transformation scorecard, capturing sector-wide and subsector performance benchmarks to assess compliance and progress. Mandatory gender scorecard, providing targeted performance metrics for women's inclusion, mandating reporting obligations, incentive and sanction mechanism, rewarding transformation leadership and applying pressure to non-compliant actors across the ecosystem, and real-time procurement intelligence, revealing gaps and opportunities in procurement participation. The value chain access acceleration model. 31 years down the line, we are at accelerating model gear. Correcting the pipeline collapse from training to scale. The model outlines a progression from training, incubation, enterprise development, procurement access to scale. Pipeline collapse at procurement stage, that's what we have found, that there is a collapse at procurement stage. Women exit the system between incubation and procurement due to lack of formal access structures. Not to waste much of your time, I've often heard women saying they've had to take a second bond. They've had to lay off staff. They had to be admitted due to depression because of non-payment and businesses closing. That is what is happening on the ground, lived experiences. Looking at the systemic fix also, this is required. Correcting this break is the key to ensuring that transformation is not only initiated, but it is economically realized. Our phase 2 vision, because as you did here, this is our phase 1. Now, looking at our phase 2. Phase 2, colleagues, must now shift from research observation to implementation science design. Phase 2 must co-design enforcement instruments, procurement access pathways, measurement architecture, pilot models aligned to subsector realities. And colleagues, this is where the PPRA, the NRF, the NMU, and ourselves as the Wikona property sector can collectively lead the national transformational redesign. Our ask to this colloquium, my request here, colleagues, is simple. Let this colloquium become the turning point where research becomes architecture, where knowledge becomes application, where transformation becomes enforceable. We must now move from understanding the sector, which we clearly understand fully by now, to structurally redesigning the sector. From a guiding question point of view, this, colleagues, again, I'm sharing to yourselves. You can really ponder on these. I'll be quick. In recognizing that South Africa does not have a shortage of progressive transformation policies, but remains constrained by weak implementation and fragmented execution, what new research-backed enforcement architecture should be prioritized by the PPRA and its PSRC level to accelerate real sector transformation? Specifically, what institutional reforms or instruments, be it digital central monitoring units, would effectively shift the sector from voluntary compliance to enforceable transformation delivery? Second question, research reflects that women remain trapped in participation. We've seen the stats and the percentage. Participation without scale, presence in the sector without meaningful access to opportunity, and equitable economic mobility. What collaborative procurement models between regulators, the state, the academia, the financial institutions, and the private sector should be institutionalized to unlock bankability, that's what we're talking about now, procurement access, and scalable value chain participation for women-owned enterprises, accelerating movement toward the 40% sector target. With that said, colleagues, transformation must now become economically measurable. Transformation must become structurally enforced. Transformation must become an economic outcome, not a conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, well, firstly, let's say thank you to our colleagues for helping us to reach our target of 1:15. I have about 3 minutes left on the clock, and we won't have time for questions, but I think the take-home message is the importance of having data that assesses the sector to help in making those policy decisions and putting implementation programs in place. It was very insightful to learn about the different professionalization tools that are there in the sector and who is participating. That although you showed that there's a lot of still lack of transformation in the sector, those in the entry level are generally representative of the initiatives that are being made in terms of transforming the sector. But that also the skills that are required and the knowledge of the sector is something that is still lacking. So I think there's quite a lot of work to be done there. Mahadi was very challenging to us in terms of what policy translates into action, and that women still are at the back. They're not receiving the right support. That although there is a lot of policies, there's a lot of initiatives, but they're not reflected currently in the sector, and that there needs to be better action. We hope to see better in your phase 2, how your implementation work. And we thank you, Dr. Kabundu, for assessing already existing data in terms of census data and using that to assist you in how we understand who gets into the sector, who participates in the sector, and the opportunity. Unfortunately, there's no time for discussion. So thank you very much for your contribution. I would like to call back our program director, and thank you. Okay. Well, we have the opportunity to take at least 2 questions per presenter. So I'm going to open the floor for a question for each one of them, and then I'll take a second round of questions. Any takers? Take one. 4. Please indicate which of the presenters you would like to direct the question to. Sorry, hello. Yeah, that way, to the left. Okay, we'll take another question for one of the speakers.
Do we introduce ourselves first?
Yes, please.
There's feedback. Thank you for a well-presented, I won't call it a tutorial because we didn't engage, but it was very informative from Ms. Buthelezi, Dr. Mgomezulu, Yamgele, and yourself, Emmanuel. My name is Brian Mbono. I'm a board member of the PPRA. This is a well thought out initiative, and if I had deep pockets, I would say it should be copied and pasted throughout the 9 provinces. But during my 9 to 5 or Monday to Monday, I'm the CEO of South Africa's most iconic development, which is Oceans Umhlanga in the city of Durban. I call it the Miami of Africa. From start to finish, I was part of the development in all and at all levels. So I can safely say, MEC, that I'm a product of what forced transformation does for a young black person like myself from the dusty streets of Matatiela, 6 hours west from here, if not more. So my question is this, and it's to all 4 of you. You've done so well in data collection and telling us where the loopholes are, the shortcomings, etc. My biggest question to you now, well done, but I was looking for what is the job that needs to be done. You are sabotaging me, sound. What is the job that needs to be done now? We have a room full of experts here, industry specialists, and for me, a person who's been in the industry and on the ground for the past, call it 12 years, I was looking for that. Well, what do I take out there? Because I'm known as an advocate for transformation simply because our development has broken barriers tenfold. On one of the phases, there's 1,200 workers on that site. More than 40% of them are young black women who have never had exposure to the construction industry. But through us in telling WHO that in your contract, you will employ a certain amount of black women, a certain amount of young black women, and 40% of the contractors are black businesses. When I say black businesses, I don't mean Mkhize or Majola's Construction, but the director is Vanamerva. We do a BE audit every single month. I can tell you to the last cent how much we pay towards black business. We had our phase of construction mafia, but we dealt with it head on by calling all stakeholders into the room and saying, wena kubuhlungu kuphi? Here's a problem solver, we solve that. So I'm driving towards a point where you tell us and say, Mr. Mpono, this is what needs to happen in the industry. That's why I sit on PPRA and I'm an advocate for transformation in the industry. So after tomorrow, I want 5-point or 10-point plan to say, Mr. Mpono, this is what you need to speak of, because I'm a respected voice by the grace of God. But because Vivian Reddy opened the door for me 12 years ago, it's incumbent upon me in my early 40s, 42 to be exact, to pay it forward again. But your data needs to tell me, Mr. Mpono, here are the focus areas. I've had similar discussion with the MEC and the minister and incoming VC at WUSU, and I'd like to have the same with you, DVC. Uguti out there, because out there, this doesn't matter. This out there, they love that we're doing this, because they know it's just a talk shop. But be blessed when you have a radical person like myself in the room, who has the ear of President Kings, CEOs, chairmen across the country, to say, this is what needs to happen. Why? I'm blessed to have a 5 billion rand project and a 10 billion rand property portfolio that is able to be the voice of property. If anything, over these 2 days, make me that, because it would be a miss of my fellow board members not to understand what must we regulate. And also the MEC and minister, they don't create those jobs. They are the policy makers. So next time when you do such an exercise, highlight what policies they need to change. Because when policy changes, it gets gazetted, it goes to NCOP, it goes to Gupi, and might be even after MEC's time, tenure as the Public Works and Human Settlements Minister. Some advice, while you're answering my questions, is that tell them what they need to change. Don't give them data. They have research people to do that. But substantiate your data and say, MEC, this needs to change. Then you know, it doesn't need a colloquium. The colloquium is to say, MEC, here's burning like. Then you tell her, okay, I see the problems. Now here's us. Tell her what you don't have any change. Then you substantiate with the data. Then you'll be on the right track. And then throw in, 5 kilograms of brine there to shake the industry. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe we give them each a 1-minute pitch to say what is the take-home message. If they had to write a policy briefing, give you what is the take-home message from their presentation. Okay?
So
1, 2, 3. Yes.
Or go a step further, because this is a colloquium, it's not a talk shop.
Mm.
They mustn't pitch to me. Pitch to the policy makers, so that us job creators work together and address what they keep on researching and but at your discretion, program director.
At my discretion. 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mpondo, for your question. This is Black Pride, I suppose. Hey, well done. Well done. So I, as a Black woman, born and bred in the dusty streets of Soweto, am 25 years in the business, in the property sector space. Amongst the very first Black women in the property space, not construction, property. Now, your question says, what is the job that needs to be done? We have undertaken our first phase 1 desktop study, which I'm happy to announce that the PPRA has in possession. Should you need a copy, please shout, it will be shared with you. Now, our ask from the phase 1 study says that we are recommending, because that's the best we can do, but to recommend, not demand, Strengthening policy enforcement. First point. To ensure greater representation of women in leadership positions. You heard the statistics. There's plenty of women out there, but they're not in leadership positions. Secondly, expanding women-owned businesses' access to finance and funding and procurement opportunities. Sifuna umsebenzi. Njengoba ngishilo, we don't want to be subcontractors or what do you call them? Fronters. Thirdly, enhancing mentorship and skills development programs that are tailored. You see the challenge, I'm actually challenging Nelson Mandela University and a good number of tertiary institutions. We are taught what institutions think we need. No one has come to women and asked women what they need to know. Just like developers, we build what we think a township requires. We do not speak to the communities and ask them what they want. Enhancing mentorship and skills development programs tailored to women in the property sector. And lastly, creating strategic public-private partnerships to do what? To accelerate performance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll invite our next. Are you coming? 1 minute.
Sorry, on my side, I never finished even looking at the recommendation because of time issues. But one thing which I want to clarify that I think there was something which was mentioned by my colleagues. When they are talking about the property sector, they are talking about it as under the PPRA, but the property sector is wider with the property industry. It includes even people like architects, quantity surveyors, and so on. So with my research, when I was talking about the property sector, I was talking about it from that context. And then the real estate services sector is what is under PPRA. Yes, so their findings actually are not out of harmony with the research which was done. So one of the things, for example, that would come up with, one of the conclusions that we realized, because there was also the field of contract period of employment. If you make the contracts longer for the participants, they will play a more meaningful role in the real estate sector. That is one of the, rather the property sector, that is one of the conclusions that I came up with. Then also, one of the recommendations is to perform this kind of research periodically. Wherever the data comes out, perform it. Then look at how these statistics vary over time, and then you can see whether you are actually implementing the policy that is working, and if it's not, immediately take remedial measures before. You see, that is also something which I came up with as one of the major conclusions. Basically, those are the major ones that I can comment about.
Okay. Quick. Are you coming?
Thank you for that question, which is quite challenging. But at the same time, we feel like we've already addressed most of the recommendation. So I will just lean more towards what we're already doing as PPRA. There are 6 projects which we're trying to do a data-driven sector. So everything we've researched this far, we are researching about 6 topics. We are sitting on a 3rd one. From it, we've already produced a policy brief, which is trying to reinstate education system. Besides that, we can sit and say, let us get jobs, but how? We have to inform policies. So through this research, we are able to change and inform policies. from our research, we've produced policy brief. Yes.
Give her 3 points. Would MEC, from that research, sicela address 1, 2, 3. Don't tell me about the data, no. Because now you're reading from your laptop. I don't want that. You are a researcher, you are an expert. Speak, if it needs to be, speak from the heart. I didn't fly 1.5 hours to hear and be shown figures and numbers. We know that. PPRA board members are here so that we can take what you've told us and implement it. But now MEC and some of her colleagues in her office, industry experts, 3 things. Close your laptop and speak from the heart, Ngomezo.
I wasn't
Don't
reading.
give me
I
data.
was
Vale
actually-
laptop uthethe nje ukuthi nazi ingxaki MEC esinazo. Just 3.
Okay.
Elevator pitch.
Thank you for the opportunity once again. Just to disclose, I wasn't reading the laptop. I was actually recalling what I had said. But just to be frank and straightforward, MEC, I stand in front of kids every day who are looking for employment and they're losing hope. They will always ask me to say, they will just ask me, ma'am, after this, what are we, like, what's our next option? Because they've lost hope as youth. They always say, is it a better option of going, being a scholar or being academic? Because there are no jobs. It's even worse for us who are women. There's nothing for us. They always prefer males over us, but yet we're seeing that we're very active in the sector. So MEC, can you please have jobs, especially for our youth and also to improve our sector even further, because we're showing that we have enough skills. We are leading all the research projects. So in summary, we need jobs, especially for youth. I'm not just speaking about me, I'm also lecturing students who have lost hope. Thank you.
Thank you. I think they will have enough room at lunch to engage with you. We are very mindful that we have to catch up also with the afternoon program. So I will release everyone and say thank you to our speakers. Thank you for the wonderful research that you shared with us. Make use of the opportunity to engage the experts and stakeholders, important decision makers and funders of your work. Bring the money here. Thank you very much, colleagues. There will be an opportunity to take a photo outside and immediately lunch will be available. Thank you for your attention.